It's time now for Media Watch, and I'm joined here in the studio by James Creedon. Hi there,
Tom.
James. Now, it's been exactly a week since the Saudi journalist vanished mysteriously in Istanbul. I'm talking about Jamal Khashoggi. What are you seeing in the press coverage?
Well, I think a week on, a lot of people are looking now at how this might diplomatically affect Saudi Arabia's relations with various countries, notably Turkey, where this incident happened, and the US. This is one piece in the Washington Post where, of course, Jamal Khashoggi contributed articles asking, is it time for a split? Because, of course, there's been a lot of cozying up between, as he's known as, MBS and Donald Trump. So I'm wondering if that should now be reviewed. This is a Democrat Senator from Connecticut, Chris Murphy, who's one of the voices that has been asking that question. If this is true, that the Saudis lured a US resident into their consulate and murdered him, it should represent a fundamental break in our relationship with Saudi Arabia. It must be said that we still don't know the facts for now, but it does look not promising in terms of his well-being and safety. The Times here looking then at the relations with Erdogan and Turkey, and some pointing out that despite the fact that, well, I'll just read what Fadi al-Khadi said. He's a well-known Arabic language Twitter contributor. Part of a concern regarding the promised investigation by Turkey into this disappearance is that Erdogan's government is heavily silencing, persecuting, prosecuting and jailing scores of journalists. Why would Jamal matter to them? Well, of course, it is an issue that goes beyond press freedom. It's an issue that is diplomatic and very sensitive. So I think it does matter to the Turkish authorities to some extent. Of course, they have their interests as well to protect. The Washington Post has basically promised that it will be relentless in finding out what has happened, and it has been very, very vocal over the last week, sharing various pieces of video evidence, that showing that he did go into the embassy. I'll get to that in a second, or to the consulate rather. Slightly less critical is Al Arabiya, Saudi international rolling news channel in Arabic and in English. They're wondering if it isn't an orchestrated campaign, but they're one of the few media asking that question. And indeed, they published a video of the Consul General in Istanbul, the Saudi Consul General, giving people a tour around. Let's play a little extract from that. You'll see in these images that he's walking a journalist from Reuters around the consulate, opening up cupboards to prove that Mr. Khashoggi is not indeed hiding in a cupboard. So it's humorous. It would be funny if it wasn't funny, I suppose, is the best way of putting it. Yeah, so certainly concerning, Tom.
OK, and there are images doing the rounds that clearly show Jamal Khashoggi going into that building. No such image exists for him leaving the building. That's
right. So that in itself, that sleuthing has been done online in that regard. And you can see here one tweet relaying those images, geolocalization showing it is indeed the north entrance of the Saudi consulate. You can see a kind of a larger image there, and indeed no image of him emerging, as this particular, the New Arab points out on their Twitter feed. So another newspaper doing some sleuthing is the English language Turkish paper Daily Sabah. They've been looking at flights coming in from Riyadh and leaving again ahead of their scheduled departure, showing that the 9 people on board were staying in hotels very close to the consulate. Indeed, it looks quite fishy. These are elements that would point to some suspicious activity around that time by the Saudi authorities.
Yeah, they're particularly interested, aren't they? And a couple of private jets that went in and out. And a lot of people saying this really speaks volumes about the attitude of the new leadership, the new Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, towards dissidents. What's foreign policy saying about this?
Well, indeed, they're saying that the Crown Prince will stop at nothing to silence his growing number of critics, whether they be at home or abroad, regardless of where they live. And another detail in that article is that activists and officials are saying a large number of political dissidents live in self-imposed exile without formally seeking asylum, as Khashoggi himself did, and many others are in the process of applying. In other words, there's a climate of fear. And I'll finish on that story with the fact that Jamal Khashoggi didn't really describe himself as a dissident. He wanted his country to thrive. He was, yes, critical of the Wahhabi religious leaning in Saudi, critical of corruption, but it was quite soft criticism in many respects. He was in favour of Mohammed bin Salman's 2030 vision, for example. So it really would leave one perplexed. I'll finish with what Fadi al-Khadi said. It's worrying for a whole load of reasons. Can you be critical at all? And it leaves you thinking that no one is safe.
Okay. Just before we finish, a lighter story you've picked out for us. Perhaps a bit of imitation of the British Prime Minister's dancing has been happening.
That's right. To remind viewers, let's take a look at these images of the British Prime Minister at the Conservative Party conference, where she came into the music of a Dancing Queen by Abba and did a little dance, and it led to kind of widespread kind of mockery online for her dance moves. But the EU Commission head, Jean-Claude Juncker, pulled some kind of similar moves yesterday in Brussels. I think we have the images of that as well. This was at a meeting to do with the regions in Europe, and it looks pretty similar to me. Looks pretty similar. Now, rather swiftly, this is political.eu relaying the news here. The Commission completely denied that this was anything to any kind of mockery, saying that it was just an improvisation. But he did throw in an Abba line saying, without a song or a dance, what would her life be? So that seems to me like a clear case of admission. Meanwhile, just some coverage here. The Irish Times wondering if this isn't the Dancing King. And others wondering who did it better. And there's even, I think, this you can see here the two of them side by side. I think it's a bit of a draw, to be honest myself.
Well, I think she got a rather bigger applause than he did for hers at her Conservative Party conference. She got rapturous applause for that dance.
That's right. She didn't deserve that.
Clearly, a bit of self-deprecating humour works well on the British. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Tom.
James Creedon with today's edition of Media Watch.